everybody in the right place? No, they're not. Pat, you keep on moving to the wrong place. My screen keeps on reorganizing itself. It should, when you put your screen like it's supposed to be, it's supposed to stay there, but it doesn't. Welcome, YouTube, to the Talk Show for Talkers. I know we're on the wrong day. We should be recording tomorrow, not today. But we have a very special guest with us today, an international president of the past, a current regional advisor for, as Paul said earlier, pretty well the rest of the world, other than the United States. And, other than the United States, pretty well, isn't it? Anyway, so we're going to... No.
I hear all the other regional advisors going, what? Region 3, Region 3.
But they're all in the States, aren't they? Anyway.
They're not.
Aren't they? Okay.
They're region advisors for Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong.
Do they exist? I didn't know those countries existed.
I want to ask Pat, who's regional advisor for Antarctica. That's another question we'll come to later, I'm sure.
Is there a Toastmasters club in Antarctica? There's plenty of...
Yes.
There's enough people there. There's enough people there to make one. Okay, let's get this show on the road, as they say. Whoops. Are you ready, Ted?
Yes.
Well, I'm not, because I just clicked my buttons in the wrong order, so we'll undo that, and we'll start again. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friends. You're very welcome to the Talk Show for Talkers on irishtalkers.com. Our email address is info@irishtalkers.com. You can also find us on Facebook as the Talk Show for Talkers. We look forward to your comments, your questions and feedback. Indeed, we regard this as evaluation. You can listen to previous shows on our website, irishtalkers.com. We also publish the Public Speaking Weekly. This is a roundup of links from the internet. It's all about Toastmasters, public speaking, confidence, leadership. So look out for the newspaper link on our website. My name is Ted Malamphy, and I'm joined again this week by the prolific, persuasive, passionate, personable Paul O'Mahony.
Listeners, it's a pleasure to be with you again. And to be called personable, I think that may be the first time. Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome, Paul. And we also have the magnificent, multi-talented, mindful, motivating Moira O'Brien.
I always try and think of a good response to that. And of course, I'm tongue-tied today. I was looking for a totally titillating, temporary talking point to address the Ted Malamphy, but I failed miserably.
Well, you still haven't come up with the tedious Ted, which I was expecting for quite a while, actually.
That's very true, nice Ted. I'll have to work on that one.
Yeah, okay. Now, since Moira has mentioned it live on YouTube, I'm going to also reveal that we have a very, very special guest with us. And normally we don't introduce this guest until the second part of the show, but I'm going to be a revealer. I'm going to give you insider knowledge because we have the Regional 10 Director, Pat Johnson, with us, former, as Moira said, International President. Pat, you are so welcome to Ireland, to District 71, and particularly to the Talk Show for Talkers.
That's great. I feel like I'm in the right place because I love to talk with people. So thank you for inviting me.
Moira said, yeah, and thank you, Pat, for coming along to be with us. And we're looking forward to this show immensely. So on today's show, we have the usual mix of a thought for the week, a word of the week. We certainly are going to have that guest interview with our special guest, Regional 10 Director, Pat Johnson. Paul will be delving into what he likes to delve into. And Pat, you will be obviously involved in that as well, since you like to talk. Paul likes to talk. It's one of the, I suppose it's an occupational hazard when you're a Toastmaster, actually, that you like to talk. So it's also one of the great benefits of being a member of Toastmasters, that we are trained, we know how to talk, at least I hope we know how to talk. And Moira will be doing a little bit as well, because Moira does a lot of our interviews. She doesn't just look after all the nuts and bolts in the background. Moira makes a huge contribution to the talk show for talkers. So,
Ted, just to cut across you for a second there, I'd like to put it on the record, just so the listeners will understand, that I love listening to you. I'm a listener to your tone of voice.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you. And I really appreciate that. That's very nice to hear that. So I'm going to give you my thought for the week. And I got this thought for the week from one of the books, Pat, that we were speaking about earlier, all the books we read. I took this particular quotation from the first chapter of Atomic Habits by James Clear. And the quotation is, to write a great book, you must first become the book. And that was given to us by Naval. He's an entrepreneur. Naval Ravikant. He's an entrepreneur. He's an investor. So he might be a good man to talk to about things as well. So to write a great book, you must first become the book. Has anybody got any comments to make about that quotation?
Ted, I have to declare an interest. My grandfather set up a bookshop in the main street in Limerick in 1902, and it's still in the family, and there are a few other extra bookshops added to it. So I'm not a disinterested party when it comes to becoming a book. People who bought books put clothes on my back, food in my mouth, and shoes on my feet. But the idea of becoming a book, that's superb, you see. That I love it, because it's all about authenticity. What comes out of your fingers has and ought to have a lot. I've got a dog in the background who is
no, in the foreground.
I thought you had, all right. I could hear somebody slipping along your tiles.
You see, Pat, these are the sort of things I have to put up with and I have to edit out afterwards. But
listeners, the wonderful thing is when you're podcasting, and a lot of Toastmasters will be podcasting because it's one of the projects you can choose.
Yeah.
Don't control everything unless you go into a hermetically sealed place. The key thing is to be able to say, it isn't the end of the world. Pat Johnson isn't upset. Moira O'Brien is. Ted has taken it in his stride. The world is full of things like that. I forget what I was saying, Ted, except you really do.
You were talking about the books and your grandfather, how it put food in your mouth.
But becoming the book is a great metaphor for somehow or other letting the words come out of the book that you are onto another page. I like it. I've never heard it before.
Yeah, I think it's a nice one. And I'm not sure, did he come up with that? Was he inspired by the book that James Clear has just written? Because it's quite a good book. And James Clear reveals a lot about himself in that book. This will be his first book. So it may have been. And I would like to make a suggestion about that dog, whether it is your dog or whether it is Mara's dog. We should get tap shoes for the dog, because there seemed to be a lovely rhythm to the way he was skating along the tiles. He'd be a great tap dancer.
Would you mind talking to the listeners while I get rid of the dog?
Certainly. Well,
I hope you're not going to shoot the dog or anything.
I will give you my thoughts on this particular quotation, which I'm now reading. To write a great book, you must become the book. Well, it's an interesting quote. I don't know that I quite agree with it. Become the book. I suppose he means you have to be fully invested in what you are writing about. That if you aren't fully invested, then you're not going to write a great book. That's the only thing I can think of. Otherwise, I'm not sure I agree with it, but maybe I do.
Can I ask you a question? Pat, can I ask you a question about this? Because you've written more than one book in your lifetime and may well write more books in your lifetime. Have you ever become a book?
I think you do. I think you become known by what you write about. And then, you know, the old analogy that says when you're a hammer, all the world is a nail. I found that once I wrote my book for Toastmasters about the corporate programs, that's all people wanted to talk to me about. Mm-hmm. And I went, but I love so many aspects of the world and Toastmasters, etc. This is just one narrow area that I saw a need and I wanted to fill it. And part of that need was causing me to spend a lot of hours one-on-one with individuals talking about my ideas and things that I had done successfully in the past. And I finally went, this is crazy. I need to write this down and publish it, which I did. And I actually wrote the book, which speaks to becoming the book, is I actually wrote the book in about 3 weeks. So it was, I just sat down every day and I just did a brain dump on the page. And then I started editing when I ran out of things to put on the page. Because then I had to bring it to a level that it was general, not specific, because now it's so much more complex than the book I wrote. But I felt like it was me on the page. So yeah, I think we do. But I also find that, because I love to read, I also find that I become, if I really connect with a book, that I carry it around with me and it becomes part of me. I don't become the book, but it becomes part of me. And one of those old standbys was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I find that I use, out of the thousands and thousands of books that I continually read, I find that the principles in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits is so foundational to so many things we do in work, in play, in relationships, and how we look after ourselves. All those things just keep coming back. And I really look at that book as the foundation for so many great leadership books and ideas that were written. So, yes.
I would agree with you, Pat, 100%. That the 7 Habits for Successful People was a fantastic book. Such a foundation. And in fact, the book that I referred to earlier, Atomic Habits by James Clear, there is a certain element running through that book that he would have taken from Stephen Covey.
Yeah, I've read Atomic Habits, yes.
Yeah, that's good. And what's the name of your book, Pat, for our listeners?
Oh, a handbook for building and sustaining Toastmasters in corporations or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Hey,
well,
look,
we have that. We'll be able to source it. So, Paul, have you got a word of the day for us, which we should be using throughout this interview or through this first segment?
Well, I think we've already had a demonstration of the word of the week. You see, one of the most valuable attributes of a speaker at a Toastmasters meeting, and indeed a speaker in the local pub, is the ability to attract attention through personal magnetism and charm. We have a guest who has been utterly charming, far more charming than I am. Personal magnetism. What about that? Would you like a word, Ted, to be that would mean the power of personal magnetism?
Oh yeah, is it charismatic?
Would that appeal to you? No, I don't mind these. Let's go for a standout word, which entered the English language in the 1960s from a Spanish background, which
Right.
I already happen to know it's unfair, listeners, but I already happen to know that neither Ted nor Moira had ever come across this word before. Duende. D-U-E-N-D-E. Duende. Wonderful word. Because it's so different, because it's so educational to hear it, and because it's so apt. The power of personal magnetism and charm. That's personal magnetism and charm is quite different from charisma. For some, in fact, it might even be a more attractive feature to say that rather than be a charismatic person, this person exudes duende. There's a speech there somehow.
So would you regard me as a duendious person? Is
No,
it an
you
adjective?
see-
Is it a pronoun? Is it a noun?
No, you see, you're right. I'm delighted you brought that up because it isn't an adjective, it isn't an adverb, it isn't a verb. It is pure and simple a noun. Now, I know people convert nouns into verbs these days, causes some of us who care about these things to, have a little regret. But I'm not going to concretize you, Ted.
Okay. Because
That's
what I'd be
turning
afraid
the
of, Paul,
noun-
is
that's turning the noun concrete into a verb. You see there.
if I go into the pub and tell one of my colleagues in that pub that he's duende, I'm afraid I might end up outside the door very fast on the flat of my back.
Look, Ted, start off saying, look, you're a real charmer. You have charm. In fact, you've got personal magnetism. And in a nutshell,
I'd definitely be on the flat of my back if I told them that.
what? Charm and magnetism. Okay, look, guys, this is just word of the week. It's
Well
an
done, duende.
learn a word. I don't know if, Pat, it's to be found in your book about how to and the connection between business and Toastmasters. But duende would get you somewhere in the boardroom, wouldn't it?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Gets you places in life.
Mhm.
Okay, folks, let's bring this.
Is this the end of the
episode-
segment?
It's the end of the
Yeah, Mark has
segment.
the rolling eyes up there.
It's the end of the segment. Yes. So
Probably kill
Well-
us for.
well,
Should
look,
I say thank you very much, listeners? We'll be back tomorrow with even more duende coming to you from our guest.
okay. Right. I've got a little bit of editing.
Now, you're
to do
probably
here
killing
before
yourself
we-
to know where on earth did you find that word, Paul? People from Limerick don't go around using duende, and people who live in Cork who come from Limerick certainly don't use it. I tell you what, there's an app, word of the day. Every now and again, I go to an app. Sometimes I just open a book. Sometimes I think, well, what do I feel like talking about? But yeah, so that's where I got it.
Word of the day, yeah, that's interesting because I looked at words of the day today as well, and one of them was one that you had brought to the talk show for talkers recently, bunkum.
Bunkum. Yeah, that's a good word.
But I certainly never came across duende.
Bunkum's a good
But sure,
word.
it's only been around since 1960. Sure, Paul, you and I are older than that.
Pat, one thing we often do is I say to Ted and Moira, okay, I want you to guess when this word entered the English language. And we're not very good at guessing this, I can tell you.
Oh, come on. I did
Often
get.
it's
I
at
once.
least 2 centuries out.
You're right.
And it's one of the nice features of the Webster's on dictionary, which is the one I'm just fond of, that in Webster's you'll get a bit of info about when the book entered the language.
When the word.
Here we are.
Yeah.
There's a book in a word, isn't there?
No, I have
Anyway,
to
look,
correct
Ted, I'm
the
out of your
record.
way because you need to crack on.
But I must correct the record. I did get within 10 years of the correct time about 3 shows ago.
Once.
Well, come on. Once
Oh,
is
you
better
did,
than
yeah.
nonce.
Yeah, that's not bad, Paul. That's not bad.
Once in Moira's. Once in.
Well, within 10 years was excellent.
Yeah, I agree. I thought so too.
She's ahead of the both of you.
And I was accused of cheating.
Let's get interviewing Pat.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea to me. All right, let's get my starting point in. Are you ready, Ted? Are you ready, Ted?
Yes, I'm ready.
My internet connection is unstable, apparently.
Yes, Moira.
That's not very good. Means we're going to be streaming poorly. I did actually have an internet outage this afternoon, which did worry me slightly. But let's look. Apparently have a good connection, but right, we'll get going again.
We crack on, so.
Yeah, 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friends, to segment 2 of this week's offering of the Talk Show for Talkers. And I know you're listening very hard, because at the top of the show, we mentioned that we have a very, very special guest. And this special guest now is going to be trying to answer the 5 questions that lots of other people answered. In actual fact, Pat, we call this the grilling. So you're now in the grilling room. So it gives me great pleasure, and it's a real privilege, Pat, to ask you these questions. And the first question is, what brought you to Toastmasters?
Well, I was in a university course when I was in my early 30s as an adult learner, and I was very shy and lacked in confidence, self-esteem. I really was invisible and liked it that way. So I was in a university course studying practical politics, and at that level, we went to all the different levels of government in Canada, where I am a citizen and live. And we were studying the political process. When I got to Ottawa, which is our country's capital, to study the federal politics and processes, I was asked by the group to introduce a senator. Well, fear struck me from top to bottom, and I was absolutely paralyzed at the thought of it. I stayed up all night in absolute terror, and the next morning I did this just dreadful, stilted introduction of a senator, not having any idea whether I should stand up, sit down, how I would address him, what I would say, would I read it, did I have to memorize it, on and on, all the questions. And one of my fellow students came up to me after and said, "You should join Toastmasters." I thought, now when I think back, he was very kind. And so I went back I lived in a small community, and I thought, we won't have Toastmasters. So about 9 months later, I wasn't quick to join. About 9 months later, I finally discovered that it met in the basement of the church where I had grown up. So I went to my very first meeting, and it was the hardest thing that I had ever done to that date. But fortunately, there was a friendly fellow standing inside the door when I pulled this heavy, almost unmovable door open. And he said, "Welcome to Toastmasters." And I went in, and that was now 37 years ago. And I've gone to Toastmasters ever since. So I went for confidence and self-esteem. And I really went because I was terrified to walk into a room where there were people. I had no real desire to talk, and definitely never even gave thought to leadership. But here I am, and I've had an amazing journey, and I've actually revolutionized my life and my career as a result of that, opening that door and stepping through it. Yeah.
That's a wonderful story, Pat, and that's a beautiful metaphor that you used to encapsulate the story, opening that door. and stepping into the future, more or less. That's
Mhm.
gorgeous. And this wouldn't be one of the questions, no, but I've asked this question of many people that I know who are in Toastmasters. And I was reminded of it when you were giving us that lovely story. Do you think Toastmasters picks us out, or do we pick Toastmasters?
I believe that, well, it's a philosophical discussion, so thanks, Ted. I really believe that as we go through life, there's doors presented to us, back to the same metaphor, and we choose to open them or not. And I've learned certainly in my leadership experience and my growth through Toastmasters and how it's influenced even my personal and my professional life, that doors are presented. And when I reach out, if the door opens, it was meant for me. If it doesn't open, then there's something greater for me to do, and I need to go to the next door. So I remind people of this analogy all the time when people decide to run for office, for example, in Toastmasters, or they apply for a job that they really want. And I remind them that if that door doesn't open, then look for the greater thing that's there for you, because there's something greater. This isn't what you were meant to do. So I have that philosophy in terms of life, and we'll all open doors as long as we're willing to keep trying the doors. Don't give up because that door doesn't open. We only know what we know. And I believe that there's a higher power that knows our greatest, our highest and best, and will guide us in the doors that will open and the advantages that we'll have because of it. So yeah, thanks.
That's beautiful, Pat. Because some of us, when we reach that door, when it doesn't open, we just turn around, get a bit of a hump, and walk away. Whereas what you say is, no, you go on to the next door and just see will that open for you. That's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a real practical example that happened to me when I first ran for district office in Toastmasters, and I had moved across the country to a different district, and I was really ready in my experience to run for district office. So I ran, and I didn't get elected the first year. So I thought, well, that's okay. I'm not well known. I'll get to know some people. I'll be busy in the district. And so the next year I ran again, and I again wasn't elected to district office. And so I went away and I thought, okay, obviously this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I went away and I started competing in contests. I got really involved in chartering clubs and working with corporations with Toastmasters. I competed in the evaluation contest and won that at district level. And I started running workshops at our conferences and being conference chair, all those kinds of things that kept me engaged in Toastmasters. And several years later, one of my very best friends was district director, what was then called district governor. And she lost one of her team members right like 2 weeks after she got into office, and his mother was sick and he had to move across the country, and he gave up his office. And so she phoned me and she said, you'd be perfect to be what was now called a club growth director. And I said, no, I can't do it, Sheila. I said, I ran twice for election and the district didn't choose me. I will not take an appointment. And she said, but you would be great. And I said, I hear you. And I thank you for your encouragement and your love. And next year, I promise you that I will run again for club growth director. And so the next year I did, because I had promised her, I ran. But I went out and I got a campaign manager. I phoned the people that were influential in our districts. And I did all those things and I was elected. And what I learned from that was that I had to do a lot of preparation to be ready for that, and so that the door would open.
Superb. That's beautiful, yeah. And so I think you probably answered the second question with the answers you've given here. So the next question would have been, or it still is, what has been the greatest benefit to you?
Oh, I think just finding myself and finding my voice and recognizing that all the thoughts that tore around in my head and that I had, when I learned to verbalize them, were actually accepted and worthwhile. and to learn that I was worthy and that I was smart and that I had some value to add, that I didn't have to be invisible. So Toastmasters really revolutionized my life. And of course, I did a lot of hard work, but it also drove me to get more post-secondary education, take lots of extra training, because in the Toastmasters program, I discovered gaps that I had. And so then I went and looked for things to fill those gaps. Yeah.
And what has been your biggest Toastmasters challenge?
I think conflict always continues. I grew up where I was terrified of conflict, and so I would run away from it, avoid it. I was afraid to express my opinion in case people didn't agree. And people that know me now find that hard to believe, but but that was me. And so I actually went and took a 2-year program on and got a certificate in conflict resolution, mediation, and negotiation, just because I was so uncomfortable and wouldn't go there. I think it's a global issue. So many people have difficulty with conflict. And now that I'm a personal coach, I recognize that it's all based on fear, and a fear of not being liked, or fear of being wrong, or not being perfect, or whatever my personal fears are that stop me from that. So I think I've built some skills around that. I've become a much better listener because of conflict, and also going to that place of non-judgment and staying in a place of curiosity. So
that's a nice mantra you've just given us there. That's lovely. I must remember that one. So if you could, what would you change about Toastmasters, if anything?
Oh, I have a soapbox, so I won't go into all of it. But I think that because I'm a region advisor for Region 10, it magnifies the challenges that we have as a global organization. And I really feel that Toastmasters, and this is not a new thing for me to say because I've said this for many years, Toastmasters has expanded into fields around the globe where I feel, don't have a strong infrastructure to support that. We started 10 years ago when I was president to look at being a legal entity in the countries that we're in. We're far from complete in that work yet. And that stifles us in being able to create infrastructure to support Toastmasters. We struggle to get product to our districts and our members. We struggle with money transfer back and forth across borders. And so, and we've done some, kudos to Toastmasters, we've done a lot of work in bringing translations onto the board or onto the table for people to have working copies of developing languages around the globe. So I think that's our greatest challenge, is to meet the needs of the clients that we already have around the globe in terms of money, education, getting access to product. I really believe in equality. When we have customers, I feel that our customer in Cork should get the same kind of delivery and support and service as somebody in New York City, or somebody in Toronto, Canada, or somebody that's in Beijing. And I think that is a reasonable expectation, but I also realize that it is a problem of a huge magnitude to actually do globally when we're not legal entities yet in those countries. How do we put a warehouse in a country where we're not a legal entity and ship out from there? So that's the thing that I think is the greatest need for Toastmasters. And I think we'll eventually get there, but it's going to be, I believe it's years to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, well done, Pat. And
it's not a work we can abandon.
Yes, well done. And you probably answered all the questions, but the fifth one, the final question would be, what keeps you coming back to Toastmasters? And as you said yourself, you're a member now for 37 years. So that answers it.
Yes. Well, and here I am being region advisor, and I know people said, "What are you doing? You've already been president." And I said, "But you know, the interesting part was this is the anniversary, the 10th anniversary of when I was president. So 2010, I was 2010, 2011, and this was the 10th anniversary of when, as president, I pinned the very first region advisor pin on the very first region advisors." And I'm a person that when I belong to an organization, I need to be involved. So I was involved in the building of pathways, the curriculum development of pathways, which was that bridge for my time between being past president and getting involved at the districts and writing my book, etc. And now I looked around and I went, what can I do that will keep me engaged? And my own personal growth, because I want to keep learning and be active. And what I discovered is that my gift and my interest is in strategic leadership. And I went, doing operational would be very challenging for me. So to get back down and work with the districts and support them and look at the operational, and so many things have changed since I was district governor. I was district governor in 2001 too. So 20 years later, everything on the board has changed. I mean, some policies haven't, but every form that I would have looked at has changed. The tools that we have, the way, the processes that are done. So much to learn. And that's why I'm still here, because Toastmasters has the ability to expand as we go looking for things to learn. And I'll end that with a paraphrase of a quotation by our very first female international president, Helen Blanchard. And Helen said, if you get out of Toastmasters everything there is to get out, then you'll never get out of Toastmasters.
Excellent. Thank you, Pat. And that's a lovely way to finish off this beautiful interview. It was a real pleasure and a privilege speaking with you about your Toastmaster journey. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for asking.
Join us again tomorrow,
and we know
folks.
You're going to be with us in the next section now as well. I just gave a little pause there for Moira to do her editing.
Sorry, Ted, I took the pause as being...
That was gorgeous, Pat. Thank you so much.
Join us again tomorrow when we'll be continuing the conversation with Pat.
Okay.
So you didn't give me the opportunity to give a decent outro. Now, we went way over time, of course, but I wasn't going to try and cut you short.
That wasn't Pat's fault. It's not so enthusiastically listening.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm verbose also.
I used to have one of those, Pat, but the back wheel fell off it.
Hey guys, can we go to the next
just
episode?
Patience. Because we ran over, it means that I have some messing around to do. Because otherwise, my template doesn't work.
So we start the next. I'm just checking with you, Ted. We start the next episode with you'll introduce it, and I'll talk to Pat.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. Yeah. Because I know you'll have questions that you want to ask Pat, particularly the division director.
I mean, fortunately, I just have 23 topics I'd like to get through in the 10 minutes.
You'll have to learn from me, Paul. Try and keep it succinct. Keep it down to 5 questions. That
well,
even though I say 5 questions, Pat, there's usually about 10 questions before I finish.
These are topics we'll be going through the top 15 policies of Toastmasters.
Well, you have the right lady to answer all those for you anyway.
The 17 corporate, successful corporate alliances.
Pat, weren't you such a lucky lady to have been asked the question, would you like to introduce the senator?
Yes, that's one of those doors that you end up going through and you think that was awful. I'm so ashamed. That's so embarrassing. And the fact that Bob, his name was Bob Russell, was a Toastmaster and it happened to be in my class.
Folks,
What-
just
what
going
a
to
gift.
take a break for 1 minute whilst I feed my animals. Otherwise, I'm going to be interrupted midstream, which would not be a good idea.
Okay, so we'll chat away here, so yeah.
Yeah.
Are
So
we?
I actually took that practical politics course because my great aunt, who was one of my heroes in life, was so interested in politics, and I'd lived with her for a short while, and I thought I really need to learn more about the workings of the Canadian government. And because she was interested in it and we used to talk about it at the dinner table, I ended up taking that course, and then here's where it led me. So very,
Fantastic,
very,
yeah.
yeah.
Brilliant.
I
And
was
as you,
when I
as you
was
said, once you open one door, where that's going to lead you,
Yeah.
fabulous story.
yeah.
How did
it
you
was-
get to Ottawa, Pat? Am I right that you grew up in Victoria, or were you
No,
grew up in
no,
Manitoba?
Manitoba. I grew up in Manitoba, and I was taking this course through a university in Manitoba, the University of Brandon, and
Excuse me, you might know some of my family.
okay.
I have deep roots in Brandon.
Oh, really?
Well,
There you go.
just sorry to cut across you,
It's a
but
small world, yeah.
did you
I
have you ever heard of a family called O'Brien Moran? Or
doesn't ring a bell.
Pam Stacey. Anyway, the thing is, I've been to Brandon. I went there in summer of '68, and I spent a month there with my mother's brother and his wife and their 8 children.
Hmm.
And yeah, Brandon, big place in my family.
Yeah. So anyway, I was at a university in Brandon, and we actually went and visited municipal, like local government, and then we went to the provincial into Winnipeg and spent a week in Winnipeg, and then we traveled to Ottawa. So we had to pay our own trip to go, but we went and then stayed in a hotel in Ottawa and spent a week on Parliament Hill and met the senators and went around and met the prime minister and all those things, governor general. Yeah, so it was a fantastic experience. I was terrified the whole time I was there because I was so shy and so nervous about everything. But yeah,
Right, we're ready to
of
restart.
course. Yeah. Okay.
Well done. It reminds me of Dan Enjoya when he said, "I see something in you, but I don't know what it is." People see things in us that we don't see ourselves.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
It's easy to see
Yeah,
it in someone
yeah.
else. Yeah.
Okay, Ted, are you going to bring us back in, or?
I will.
Maybe-
I'll bring us back in. I'll
Yeah.
introduce Paul, and Paul will introduce Pat again.
Yeah. Okay. So 3, 2, 1, go. Did you not hear me, Ted? 3, 2, 1, go. Now it's too late because I'm going to stop it.
Oh, I
Restart.
didn't hear you more. Actually,
Didn't you?
sorry about that.
Was
No.
I that quiet? Or were you just not listening to me as opposed to other people?
No, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, strange. Maybe it was a quirk of the internet. It vanished into the ether. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friend, to the most important segment of the talk show for talkers every week. And this is the part where Division Director Paul O'Mahony, one of the co-producers of the talk show for talkers, does his thing. And we are privileged that our Regional 10 Director, former international president of Toastmasters, is still with us. And Paul is going to take on this particular segment and ask Pat some of the questions that I wouldn't even dare to ask.
What an introduction, listeners. Ted wouldn't dare ask these questions. Well, let's see what these questions are. Pat Johnson, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you here. You're coming in from Victoria in Canada to Cork, Ireland, and isn't that magic?
Yes, absolutely. So is Cork magic.
Fabulous. Look, when I heard that we were going to be talking with you today, I thought to myself, hang on, what would I like to talk to Pat about? Because I'll get an opportunity. So I'll tell you the 5 things I wrote down, and then hopefully we'll be able to explore them. The first one that came to me was the role of a regional advisor in Toastmasters International. The second one was the challenge of rebuilding membership in 2001. Thirdly, broadly speaking, education and training. Fourthly, how to work with business. And fifthly, growing the alliance with Rotary. I realized that given your incredible experience in Toastmasters and your incredible self-development over many, many years since you were a shrinking violet to being an internationally accomplished trainer, consultant, presenter, and a jolly good egg, since you've made that journey, there are so many things that people would like to hear about, particularly because it's great to hear a senior leader in a voluntary organization talking out of their own experience. You just never know how many lives you can change. And I'm sure you don't have a clue how many lives you've changed, Pat. But look, people can go to the toastmasters.org website and look up what's the role of a regional advisor. Can you give us a few bullet points? And then I want to ask you a few things about actually doing it. What is the role? People know all about things up to the district director level. I'm going to generalize. People don't know what happens after that. They know there's an international president of Toastmasters. But what about the stuff in between? And the bit I want to talk about in that sandwich with you is the regional advisor. Give us a bit of an introduction to that job.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I really think of the region advisor as being an operational advisor, and we work with the district teams at the district level. So in Region 10, we have actually 8 districts, and so I work with those teams, and those teams are largely comprised of the district director, the program quality director, the club growth director, and the public relations manager. In there also, we reach the district executive committee further down into area and division directors because of some of the presentations we do. So as an advisor, often we help solve problems. I find that I can take issues to world headquarters that they may have raised or maybe a concern. So we can be a mediator or a lobbyist for issues. I find that we also can be a support if there's conflict or difficulties to provide that. Oh, well, let's look at it from a distance over here and more objective, so you're not into those relationships one-on-one. We also provide training. So right now we're into mid-year training for the district officers, so that's happening. And we facilitate exercises. We're called on to present at TLI's club officer training also. Those type of events that are focused on education. So we're usually that educational purpose or focused presentation that we're doing. We work in conjunction with the international director, who's really the strategic person that doesn't have a hands-on role in the district, but works on the board. And so a region advisor is very hands-on with the districts, where the international directors are really working at the board level. The other thing that's interesting is that the region advisors report directly to the international president. So we don't report to the international director. We have a peer relationship. We're equal in standing. One is very strategic focused board work and policy. And then the region advisor is supporting the district, hands-on supporting the district. But we both report to the international president.
Pat, there are 14 of you, 14 regions, I mean. And
Yeah.
well, just one quick question. How often do you meet with the other 13 region advisors?
Yeah, there's actually more. Some regions have more than one region advisor because 8 is the maximum districts we're given. So for example, I have 8 districts in region 10. If we had 9 districts, that district would be split and you would have 2 different region advisors assigned to different districts. But we have weekly, or not weekly, we have daily contact because we have a forum, a team forum where we meet and bring our issues and correspondence through that. But we have regular monthly meetings where we as a peer group get together and we discuss strengths, weaknesses, successes, what's going on. It's a place to bring the latest and greatest of what's happening next month, and for us to support and be close as a team. There's also a lot of person-to-person connection through that group because people have different strengths and we rely on one another and reach out to one another. So it's a pretty tight-knit group that supports one another very well. And we're very, very diverse. So
coming out of North America, as a North American in an organization which was founded in North America, how do other regions of the world respond to leadership from North America?
Well, I can only respond to that from my personal perspective, being a Canadian and arriving as a brand new RA in Region 10, being responsible for Europe and the United Kingdom. It was, some of the comments were, why are you here? You're a past president. What are you doing? Are we doing something wrong, or are you here to check us out? And none of that was relevant. It wasn't on my agenda at all. I really wanted to spend most of the year in Europe. And so when I applied for a region advisor, I asked for Europe because my intention was to live there and have the experience of Toastmasters. So I think that I wouldn't want to be a region advisor of my home region. It's great when you're the stranger with the briefcase.
You know, Pat, you're like an area director. I tell you what, there are area directors listening to this who are saying, oh my goodness, I go on club visits. And it's just like what Pat's described. Why are you here? What are we doing wrong? Are you here to report on us to head office? Yeah. So you tickle me when you were talking about that. Look, you do Sweden, Norway, Spain, France, Italy. You do Greece, and I won't list them all because I happen to be looking at the world map as we're speaking. And I really want to compliment you on your sensitivity for talking about Europe and then saying, and the UK, in other words, being aware of the latest developments in geopolitics. I think that was very sensitive of you, if you don't mind me saying so. Tell me, do you spread learnings from, let's say, Italy and Spain to Sweden and France? Do you see that as your role?
I do. I think I'm the, what would I say? I think I'm the bridge in that I have peer calls every month so I bring all the district directors together. I organize those and they come together and we discuss issues so that they're cross-pollinating. So all the district directors in Region 10 are talking with one another. And they do a good job of this already. I try to focus and bring education or speakers to them that are relevant for their role or what's happening at that time. Same with the public relations managers, same with the club growth and the program quality. So we have those 4 peer calls every month. And I also look at what is needed at the region level that might strengthen the region strategically. So for example, right now we're putting together parliamentary procedure training. One of the members from District 59 and then another member from District 71. And we're bringing people together because we want to create a community of people that have knowledge of parliamentary procedure, because we want to strengthen that presence in Region 10 to support the districts. So yes, we do share information between districts, and they do a great job of sharing with one another. They're also on WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is always burning. So if it's not the PQDs this week, it's the club growth directors or the DDs. And I tend not to get super involved in those conversations, but it really links me to what is hot on their topic list that week or that moment. So technology is an amazing tool to use in these type of positions.
Pat, I'm being given a signal, and I'm going to have to abandon my whole wonderful list because, 2.5 hours would be much better with you. But of the topics which I'd like to come on to with you in the next episode, if that's all right, I think the one that will interest the listeners most is rebuilding membership in this 2021. People can get your book about vibrant programs in corporations, and people can find your track record on fierce conversations. We leave that aside. But I'd like to talk to you, if it's possible, in the next episode about, how are we going to rebuild our membership? We need some help from people like you who are widely traveled.
Used to be widely traveled. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, well done, everyone. Well done, everyone.
You are traveling, in a way, Pat, you are actually traveling very widely. There you are. You just hopped on a transport device today from your kitchen or wherever in Victoria, and you've landed over here, as my car would say, in Cork.
Yeah. No, my car would say in Cork.
Yes, you would.
Yeah. And Pat, when you meet with the other regional directors, would you have been meeting in person on some continent, or would you do it virtually like this?
It's all virtual.
Well, I know it is all virtual now, but I mean, before this pandemic hit us, what were the arrangements then? It was still virtual then, was it?
Yes, and we would get together at the international convention where we did training, and then we would also go to mid-year training with the district teams, but that would be the extent. And we would then travel to the district TLIs or club officer training or deck meetings, wherever we were invited for that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I met Jap, JAAP. He,
yeah,
remember how to pronounce his surname. Lovely, lovely man. He came to district officer training. Actually, it was in January, and it was in Manchester, and he had a big influence on me with one little presentation that he did. But he came, did his travels really. Great to meet him. And another regional advisor came to Cork. If I remember rightly, was there a woman whose name I can't pronounce now?
Moira O'Brien, was it?
No, from Finland. You'd know.
Oh, Ture.
Yeah.
Ture?
Yeah.
She was an international director.
Oh, yeah. She was. She came to the conference the District 71 conference in Cork.
Yeah. Ture Vila Verta, I think. I might have the name a bit wrong at the end. Yeah.
Okay,
Ted,
chaps.
I don't want to hog all the time. I just would, so if you'd like to take the topic with Pat about rebuilding membership, I'm very happy to sit back and let you do it.
Well, no worries, Paul, because I knew that segment 3 would naturally bleed into segment 4. Moira might like to take some of the questions.
Well,
to present them to
as you
Pat.
know, my interest is more on the speechifying side than the organizational side. So if I were to ask Pat any questions, it would be more on her attitude towards speaking and presentation and how she would look at the key points of being a great speaker. You know, we've had wisdom from.
So we have a choice. Yeah. So Moira, we then have a choice between will we ditch rebuilding membership?
No. We have another 14, 15 minutes to play with. So yeah, let's make use of it.
Okay, well, will you lead off then?
Yeah, I think it's well worthwhile talking about renewing memberships and how we're going to get back on track. So I certainly have something I would like to hear.
I'll do the reintroduction again, so Moira.
Sure. Yeah.
So will you introduce Ted and go to Moira? And Moira, will you talk to Pat about speeches? And then, and I bet you this won't be easy to do, get out of that topic and
hand over to
and hand back to membership with me. This is a challenge. I'm going to watch this. This is going to be fun.
Count me in there, so
I'm not so sure about the fun, but let's see. Just give me 1 second whilst I key up a bit of prompt. I just want to prompt myself.
Pat, the number of episodes over, I don't know, Ted would remember the number of years that Moira has done.
6 years.
This podcast.
We started in 2014.
About different aspects of speaking. They must run into well over 100.
Oh, easily. And I've been doing that segment for 4.5 years, probably. Certainly 4 years. So at the average of 40 episodes a year, that's 160.
And you've barely scratched the surface.
Oh, rubbish! I've pretty well cleaned the basin out.
Tell you what, no one's ever cleaned the basin of how to speak to other human beings in a pleasant and influential way. No one's ever cleaned that bucket out.
Okay.
And they never will.
Right.
Okay. I shut up. Over to you guys.
Okay. Ted, 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends, to the final segment of this week's offering. And I regard this as being Toastmasters Gold, the conversations that we're having with Pat Johnson, Toastmasters Gold. And Moira, I know you have a question that you would like to put to Pat. So off you go, my dear.
Well, I am interested in speech making, speechifying as I call it. So what I would be interested in, having heard from pretty well all the best in the world. We've had a number of world champions on the show. We've had international directors. We've had district directors. We've had Dan Rex, the CEO. So, we've had a lot of experience from many different people. I would say probably the experts in the field. And I've spent a lot of time with Darren LaCroix and currently with Craig Valentine to improve my speaking. So I thought it would be interesting to hear the things that you consider are the most important things that we should be paying attention to when preparing our great speeches?
Well, thank you for that very complex question, Moira. And after hearing all the people you spoke to, I wonder what I could add that would be new, but I will share my ideas. I'm a graduate of Craig's coaching program, so I do know all the technology and around speeches that he shares, and I learned a great deal from that. The first thing that strikes me and what I listen to for a speaker is authenticity. And if they're not authentic, I don't engage with them. I think that somebody could have written their speech and they've memorized it. And so I disengage. I want to have a heart connection with my speaker that I'm listening to. I want to know or feel that they care about me and that they're centered on me, that they're really audience centric. I want them to have internalized the speech, not memorized it. So know that they're speaking, and it'll be different today than it was yesterday or tomorrow. But that it comes out of the fullness of their heart. So there has to be a sense of passion and intensity also that comes from them, and something that intrigues me. So I don't want to know necessarily the answers, but I want them to ask me questions and tell me stories that causes me to step into the speech, that I step into my experience through their words. And those are the things that are so important for me. I've sat, as many of us have, through a lot of world champion speeches. And the ones that I remember and the ones that intrigue me and the ones that I want to win are the ones that have moved me. Not excluding intellectually being moved and stimulated, but also moved at the heart level, that I would be willing to do something different or that it impacted my life. So those are the things that are really important for me in a speaker. First of all, that authenticity. We start at the beginning of the alphabet with the A, and if we don't have A, I have a hard time to stay engaged or even get engaged. So
I go down to the other end of the alphabet, and I start with S. S for storytelling. So when you are writing a speech, do you look at the stories that you can incorporate into the speech to make a speech interesting, or do you look for more esoteric points that you can make by maybe pointing to life experience or other things other than storytelling?
Years ago, I sat down as an exercise and I wrote down all the intersections that I came to in life where I made big decisions and that were triggers in my life for changing direction, doing something else, making a choice. And through those, writing all those points down, then I created very concise stories around them. And what I've discovered is that once I wrote those stories concisely, that I had this great library of like 50 stories. And so often if I'm asked to speak, somebody might say, will you speak on resilience? And I go, oh, I've got a couple of stories that will relate to that. And so it depends on where I'm asked to start. I find stories also are so rich because a story of leaving a situation because I was lacking confidence and self-esteem could be used to illustrate the lack of team or the importance of team, the importance of self-worth or self-care.
Sorry.
So the stories can illustrate so many things.
Sorry, folks, we've got an issue. I seem to have hit a wrong button. Let's go back and listen to what I had last recorded?
Years ago, I sat down as an exercise and I wrote down all the intersections that I came to in life where I made big decisions and that were triggers in my.
Right. It was my dog barking that I had to go and deal with because it was coming over on the stream. So could you go back to, let's say, from here?
Intersections that I came to in life where I made big decisions and that were triggers in my.
Could you pick up from there, Pat? Or if I play the little bit before,
Sure.
I'll play the little bit before that. So the lead into that, I'll stop playing Moira. The lead into that is
down as an exercise and I wrote down all the
okay, I wrote down all the, yeah, you can pick up from there.
life-changing.
Yeah, hold on. I have to count you in. 3, 2, 1, go.
All the life-changing decisions that I made. So those intersections in life. And what I did was capture those stories. I actually rewrote them to get rid of the superfluous information and found the gems in each of those stories that would be teachable moments. And so I've got that library of stories. So if I'm called on by a group to speak on resilience, for example, I could pull out a number of stories that I've already crafted and use them as examples that illustrate resilience. Those same examples might be used down the road to illustrate the importance of having a team or being vulnerable. So many uses in stories. So that situation is where I have stories already built in a library. And that was created because of being asked to speak with very little notice, particularly when I was president, or an international director, you're asked to speak, you walk into a room, now you speak. So you have to have your arsenal ready. I think also that when I'm asked to speak on certain topics that I haven't prepared before, I do sit down and I think, where do I come from philosophically on this topic? And how do I feel about this? Do I have any quotations? I love quotations also, and things that I've read to be able to be informed from sources. And I feel also that my own personal beliefs and my personal commitments influence what I say. So there's things I present on, like, for example, I did a workshop not too long ago on being an exceptional club coach. Well, I was super passionate about that because I've been there and done it. I didn't have any stories necessarily, but I had that experience to draw on. So I used the examples from what I did and related to how it could potentially work for people. So I think depending on where the request comes from and what it's on, I start in different places.
I think that will do for me, and I'm going to hand you back to Paul because I appreciate everything you said there, and that was really good answer to my particular love of speaking. So thank you for that. But I know Paul wants to come back in with his urgent question about renewing memberships and gaining back what we've lost. So Paul, over to you.
But I love your use of the word intersections. And Toastmasters International has been at an intersection in the last year. It's simple to call it, what are we going to do when COVID hit us? That was an intersection of some sort. But a lot of people listening to this are at a different intersection right now, which is having to face into the future where online meetings are the norm. And nobody has confidence about when we're going to be back face to face. We lost here in our division in Cork 20 clubs. We lost a third of our members didn't renew. So we are an example of a division in District 71 that is faced with a big climb. We need help. Help us, please. Pat, how can we do it?
Oh, Paul, if I had the answers to all of this, I would be a multi-billionaire. But I have some ideas, and they're more philosophical than practical. But I really believe that we in Toastmasters tend to do the same thing over again. And I think that that's where our greatest challenge is, that right now we're asking people to get out of their comfort zone and create something different. So I look at life and we have a comfort zone. So right now, recruiting members, phoning our friends, having them walk into our club is inside our comfort zone. And if we take that and we move it way over here, it's called our discomfort. And that's where we need to be right now. We need to do something entirely different than we've been doing. I look at clubs and I go, when we're online, you need to recruit online. And I don't see good recruitment happening online. We're recruiting Toastmasters to join other clubs, but that doesn't build this organization. That's an illusion that we're building when Paul joins another club and now belongs to 7 or whatever it might be. Or so we need new members. And so we need to reach out into the world to let people know that we're online. So I think that's unique to each geographical location. I think that's unique to our personal way of interacting culturally. And so I don't have a global answer to that. But the broad answer is that you must do something different than you're doing, that you've done in the past. Because if you keep doing what you've always done in the past, you're going to get what you got in the past. And that's not what we're getting. That's not what we need. We need people that are willing to be online. And I think that this is illustrated also with our club growth directors who are working, that had to find a brand new way to charter clubs. They're chartering clubs now, but it took a while to figure out how to do that. How do you do a demo meeting on site? How do you do speechcraft online? How do you reach out to those people that aren't online, don't know Toastmasters exists, that might come to our meetings? And I think that's the challenge. We have to be uncomfortable, do something new, and try it out. We have to build the bridge as we go across the water.
Pat, I want to behave inappropriately.
Okay.
I want to lobby you here, and this will go out in the public. I want to lobby you to facilitate a meeting at which, not a 1-hour webinar where nobody has a chance to join in, something of a little bit more longevity than that, so that we can go into getting out of our comfort zone. Because as you were talking there, I was thinking to myself, look, I'm a division director. What is getting out of our comfort zone? It means, for example, definitely it means going to Rotary. Okay, there's a lead. Get out into Rotary. Now, I'm a bit nervous about going out into Rotary and behaving as if the only interest we have in Rotary is getting them to join us. But leaving that aside, you now have me thinking about, go out to golf clubs. Go out to members of golf clubs and get them to come in and join Toastmasters. Toastmasters for golf we could even have, couldn't we? There are people out there who aren't members of Toastmasters. They would be interested maybe in coming to meetings so that they could get on club committees, so they could become club vice captains, so that they could become, golfing union of Ireland, fishing people, bridge people, the whole thing. But I want a forum where, one big-headed individual has a few ideas, wants to get the ideas from other people. I want you to please take away that passionate plea.
I've got it written down.
Yeah, give us something that's open. We don't so much want lectures, probably. We just want you to keep saying, get out of your comfort zone, guys. Give us another example. We don't want lectures and lectures because, we got to get people to adopt it. Look, I'll be very personal. I got elected as a division director. And I would say, because I stood on a platform of saying, I stand for growth. That's it. I stand for growth. I want to grow. We're a disgracefully small number of people in Cork. 380 people in Cork, 200,000 people, a joke. We're irrelevant. We don't exist. I want to grow this organization. Okay. I was naive, of course. I didn't realize how many other people I'd need on my team to be able to do it. But the thought was there. And we need to attract people who come into the organization explicitly to help grow it. But, I want your help, please. I plead for you to say, guys, get out of your comfort zone. Let's get together and let me hear about being uncomfortable. Please.
Okay. I've got it written down. Thanks, Paul.
Well, I'm going to hand over to Ted Melanphy now, who I think would be the appropriate person to bring this episode of the show and on all of our behalf, and the behalf of all the listeners. Ted, you're the man.
Well done, Paul. Well, I think, Pat, you got a flavour of the kind of questions that I wouldn't dare ask you. You have a fantastic call to action there from the Division A director in District 71. He wants you to use your crowbar to either put us into our discomfort or get us out of our comfort, whichever way you want to look at it, Pat. So I think that is a challenge. And what was striking me actually when you were asking that question, Paul, of Pat, and she mentioned it in her answer, speechcraft, or standing up in front of a camera and doing a YouTube plea and sending it out on YouTube. You too can become a good speaker if you join Toastmasters. Let's do little clips like that and try and get those out there. And it's amazing once you ask the question how it gets all these little neurons in my brain or in everybody's brain starting to fire off, So sorry, Pat, did you want to say something there?
Well, I was just going to say, when you do those clips, make sure that you don't speak Toastmaster speak, that you speak street speak, like pretend I always like to imagine I'm sitting having coffee with somebody. Yes. That I've just met, and I'm talking to them about why they might come to Toastmasters. And so I leave all the jar, too many barriers for them to get through to get into the door.
Yeah, superb. Fantastic advice. And it's a beautiful way to wrap up this week's show of the Talk Show for Talkers. Pat, it has been a privilege and a pleasure speaking with you. And I know I wish you the very best of luck in your travels in District 71 and around Region 10, because there are more than just the one district. So I wish you well in your travels. Stay safe. And thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed the questions and your personalities, and it's been great to be back in Ireland and to get to know you more and to share the ideas. And I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone, be uncomfortable, because that's where we learn. When we're uncomfortable, we're learning. So that's the place to be in Toastmasters. Thank you again.
Excellent, brilliant.
Thank you very much, everyone. Join us again next week when we'll have another great show for you. We hopefully have an interview with somebody a little bit closer to home. We'll see you next week at the same time. Bye for now. And many thanks to Pat for joining us as our special guest this week. So it's bye from me, Moira, from Ted, and from Paul.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's
bye. See you next week.
That's the end of YouTube, is it?
It can be if we can say goodbye to YouTube.
I just want